Good morning, everyone. So we will start in a moment. We already have our speakers here and also Dean of Faculty of Visual Art and Design from ITB, Dr. Rikrik. And we also already have Professor Joe Bautista and Professor Riama Maslan, and also Miss Hyeyoon Oh from Seoul Institute of the Art. For those who just enter the room, please mute or turn off your microphone before and during the presentation. And if you have any question, please write down your question on chat box. If you watch it from YouTube, you can also write it down in the comment box in YouTube. And don't forget to mention your name and your institution because I'm going to read some of the question during the Q&A session. Okay. Okay, let's begin this webinar. Good morning, Indonesia. Good afternoon, Korea, and good evening for those in California. Hello, my name is Dianing Ratri. I'm going to be your host for today's webinar, The Influence of Culture in Typography Around Us. Today, we will share and discuss about how the cultural diversity can influence and merge with typography trend in different places. I will explain the rules of the webinar. First, please mute or turn off your microphone before and during the presentation. Second, if you have any question, write down your question on chat box and don't forget to mention your name and your institution. I'm going to read some of the questions later. And now I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Dr. Riama Maslan Sihombing. She is an associate professor of visual communication design at Institute Technology Bandung. She also served as the head of ITB Visual Communication and Multimedia Research Group and also co-founder of Litara, an independent children's book organization. Her research interests in graphic design include the subject of vernacular street typography and graphic. So today she will deliver her recent research of how the mix of traditional and modern typeface can influence the Indonesian street nameplates or signage. Our second speaker is Professor Joe Bautista. He's an associate professor of art and design at California State University, Northridge. He also served as director of Intersect LA, a student-operated and faculty-managed full-service brand and creative strategy agency located in California State University, Northridge. Not only that, he owns In Culture Design, a studio dedicated to cultivate the visual culture. As we know, Los Angeles acts as the melting pot with the diverse ethnic groups that blend into one community. That is why his presentation will be focusing on how Los Angeles cultural diversity shaping the vernacular typography around the city. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Ms. Hyeyoon Oh, a graphic designer and faculty member of visual art and uh, visual art at Seoul Institute of the Arts. Pardon. Uh, Co-host, can you change the slide, please? Okay, thank you. She has been working for several big names, such as Korean Broadcasting System, Ewha Women's University Hospital, and the City Hall of Seoul. Today, she will bring us back to retro era by sharing her founding of neutral trend in Hangul typeface. Now, before we begin the webinar, Dr. Andryanto Rikrik Kusmara, Dean of Faculty of Visual Art and Design from Institute Technology Bandung, will give an opening speech. Dr. Rikrik, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dianing, and good day, everyone. Good morning, Indonesia time. It's honor for us, all member of Faculty of Art and Design, Institute of Technology, as a host of this webinar. First and foremost, on behalf of Faculty of Art and Design and CultureHub Indonesia, I would like to thank for joining this morning in this webinar. Distinguished Ms. Hyeyoon Oh from Seoul Institute of the Arts, distinguished Professor Joe Bautista from California State University, Northridge, and distinguished my colleague, Professor Riama Maslan Sihombing from Faculty of Art and Design. Distinguished professors and all students, thank you for joining this webinar event. I hope we will remain in good health and in the midst of this pandemic situation. My name is Rikrik Kusmara, Dean of the Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology. CultureHub Indonesia Studio, placed at the Center of Art and Design Language Building, Faculty of Art and Design, Bandung Institute of Technology, a facility in cooperation between Seoul Institute of the Arts and the Faculty of Art and Design ITB, which was held since 2016 to develop knowledge and event exchange between Art and Design University in online platform. It is also pleasure for me to extend warm welcome to all of you to this webinar, The Influence of Culture in Typography Around Us. Typography in our Department of Design is one of our fundamental subject at our campus. And of course, it is also important for us to be able to understand the various forms of typography development from various different cultural backgrounds. I believe each of us has a different cultural background that encourage different creative processes and produce product of different culture or of our design product, especially in field of typography. But I also believe these differences will enrich our knowledge in this increasingly connected global world. We hope that this webinar from 3 speakers from different national backgrounds can provide many perspectives and inspiration for both of the research and creative aspect of our students. This year, Culture Hub program has started collaboration with California State University, Northridge. We hope in this webinar can be also starting program for collaboration class between Faculty of Art and Design, Seoul Institute of the Arts, and California University in the future. In closing, I would like to express my appreciation and thank to all resource persons from 3 universities, especially speakers, Professor Joe Bautista, Ms. Hyeyoon Oh, and Dr. Riama Maslan for today's webinars. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech, Dr. Rikrik. Now, Ms. Riama, are you there?
Hey. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
So I guess you cannot wait to share your presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, you can share your screen now. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm going to share my screen now. Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. I would also like to thank the Culture Hub Indonesia for the opportunity to present my talk on Indonesian street nameplates, a merge between traditional and modern typography. My presentation is about street nameplates in Indonesia, and I conducted this research with my students from typography class in ITB. First, we will revisit what street nameplates are, and then we will take a closer look at the landscape language framework from which the analysis is based on. Most of the content of this framework was based on research conducted by Fajar Erika as an addition to my own research. This part, we will look at the informative function first and then the symbolic function. After this, I will highlight the Indonesian government's policy on the use of dual language on the street nameplates and analyze this. Based on their close connection to intercultural aspect as discussed in the landscape language framework. More or less, this presentation will take about 15 minutes. If you have questions, please make notes first and we will discuss them during the Q&A sessions at the end. Thank you. What's in the name? Even William Shakespeare thought about this. Why is it important to discuss names? Street names especially. You might be wondering, why are street name signs so interesting to discuss? I'm sure everyone here has an address, right? If you have packages sent, you need to type in your address. So addresses and street names are important. And if you take a closer look, the signs are unique. There are several points of view that can be used when analyzing street name signs or street name plates. The first is landscape language framework. The second is government's policy. In this case, we'll focus on Indonesian government policy. Then there is culture theory, but we're not going to discuss this today. And lastly, typography. But then what is a street name plate? Street name plates in a landscape are space marks consisting of string of words used to show direction and to enable mobilization from one point to another. Street names contain messages and form of communication between the message maker and the receiver. In landscape language framework, PUSE depicts landscape language as an interdisciplinary review on language which interact with other languages in public space. According to Erika, landscape language deals with the situation and facts of written language in area, place, or social space. There are also discussions of linguistic landscapes such as billboards, shop signs, directions, or posted in public space using languages. Because these street names, a sign is present as part of a traffic road, there is an interaction between language, space, and place. The two functions discussed in landscape language are informative functions from its linguistic point of view, and symbolic function, which look at the language and its interactions. I will discuss a sample study of street name plates in Indonesia related to the aspects mentioned earlier as well as the function. The landscape language framework looks into onomastic and toponomastics. Onomastics is a discipline that studies names and naming. In general, the naming process or onomastic can be divided into place, name, and people's names. In its development, the naming method can also be explored not only through the inherent meaning or the original meaning, but also through the meaning that develops in society. During the colonialism period, choice of words in street naming system took the names of mountains, river, animals, cities, lakes, temple, fruits, tourist sites, and puppet figures. So earlier we looked at the landscape language framework, where it studies toponomastic or the name process. Now in Bandung City, where I live, many names the street were taken from the nature, where chi means water or river. Geographically, the city is surrounded by rivers. So there are a lot of street names here starting with chi. Cihapit, Citarum, Cimbuluit, Cimandiri, Cilamaya, and many more. And jalan means street in Indonesia. This is a sample of Jalan Cipaganti. It was renamed to the name of Indonesian local hero. And now Jalan Cipaganti to Jalan Wiranata Kusuma, which diminishes the characteristic of the region itself. So the closeness of humans to nature, to the names of their roads, changed to the names of figures chosen by local governments. In the post-independence era, the names of national heroes was chosen. Now the local figures have replaced street names. Changing street names cannot be separated from communication in the realm of power. For the past 10 years, some areas in Indonesia have applied the government's regulations to use 2 languages and 2 scripts on street name signs, one using Latin scripts and one using Kawi. Where do these Latin and Kawi originate from? You can see from the pictures the origin and the spread of the scripts. In the history of Kawi scripts, these scripts were used as a tool of ceremonies and signs for everyday life. It's common for the society with high dynamic and wide relation with the neighboring areas to embody literal culture. And one of embodiment of this culture is mastering form of writing. This Pallava script originated from South India that became the forerunner to most of the languages of the archipelago. Simbolon said that the language of the Indonesian archipelago is preserved, and thanks to the sustainable preservation of the traditions, both oral and written. And now we look at the Indonesian government policy on the use of dual language and scripts on the street name signs in Indonesia. Kawi means the origin, the ancient, verse, literature. This is the closer look at the sample of Kawi scripts encrypted in inscriptions or epigraphs. Among others, Kawali inscriptions, Osarang inscriptions, and others. Some are curved, thick, upright, wide. Some are neat or organized, depending on the style of the sculpture, as now a modern calligrapher who has a distinctive individual style. Why is it in Indonesia uses Latin, while, for example, in Thailand and Burma, they still use local characters? Here we can see the colonialist politics of the past. In order to control the resources of the colony, people were made as if they are helpless, their culture, their language system, and the knowledge were abolished. so that the colonialist cultural system was superior to its colonies. Furthermore, this issue can lead to the strengthening of the use of local languages and scripts. The aim of preserving and revitalizing the local cultural heritage. Nowadays, art and cultural concerns consider it's important to use dual languages on street nameplates as this means the preservation of culture. This has encouraged the government to issue this policy. Even though only a linguistic fact in the form of street sign, its existence can cause problems among various societies. For example, changing 600 street names in Yogyakarta city has become a difficult issue. Based on a survey conducted in 2017 by Erica, a researcher who I mentioned earlier, the results showed 4 opinions on this issue. The first group agreed. The second one agreed to a certain extent, while the third opinion refused the idea. And the last one considered dual languages issue is irrelevant. The impacts of this issue on the society include social, political, economics, and others, which I'll be further discussed later. By having these signs around, they enforce people to obey the rules. They are non-neutral signs. They are closely related to social and hierarchical structure and power. Behind this policy, the government has the power to regulate the use of language to preserve culture. Next, I will discuss the visual characteristics based on the identification of distinctive features on street name signs. The naming and dual writing names is a phenomenon that consists of verbal and visual aspects. The typographic morphology on the street nameplates can be seen from the form and writing structure, such as shape and anatomy of letters, measurement system, classification of letters, and family of letters. So we will see on the left is the humanist and or transitional sans serif. Finding the right combination of typefaces can be the difference between good design and great one. But with so many typefaces to choose from, how to decide which one will look best together? In most of the fonts used for street name signs, the selection of transitional sans serif fonts is very much used. The transitional is the most widely used typeface, as Ellen Lapton refers to as anonymous sans serif. On the right is Egyptian or slab serif. These typefaces are heavy with slabs-like serif. This is an example of the use of letter with bold and medium weight. So they are bold and medium weight. And in Hana Caraka, a swash, they use a swash is a typographical flourish, such as to exaggerated serif or terminal or tail or stroke in modern calligraphy. One of the fundamental jobs for designer is to analyze the raw material, making judgments about its structure and about how that will be expressed typographically. And since there are 2 pieces of information, the elements need more some sort of hierarchy which needs to be articulated clearly. Within the 2 lines, the placement is above and below. The upper is Latin and below is the Kawi. Furthermore, the hierarchy of writing can be studied semiotically to observe the phenomenon of attraction between the majority, usually government as the holder of political control and power, and the minorities. So the minorities have a place and are not marginalized. Next, we are going to talk about vernacular typography. Vernacular typography is a means of communication and expression that becomes a form of cultures that grows in society. In vernacular society, the street names were made by the locals and usually placed in a small street or alleys, where the making of the signs were not interfered by the government's policy. There's a tendency to use unique names, such as this one. Although there's a writing and naming imposed by government, in certain locations, there are also unique writing variation on the street names. These are samples of vernacular in Bandung and Bali, also in Makassar. The local people made these street names to their liking. The use of Harley, Fiat, Morris names show the identity of modern society. Through vernacular typography, they sought to represent themselves as a modern urban society. The naming of the street names in alleys has both informational and symbolical function. From the informational function, the street sign functions as place and place space marker. The nameplate also shows linguistic facts contained in a landscape. The facts is seen in the selection of street names in the area that are not government attention. There are free spaces apart from standard rules regarding signs. Each space has its own deal. Vernacular typography always related to the cultural and historical characteristics found in the environments in which the community concerned performs its daily activities. The naming of street names is interesting because there is the phenomenon of the interaction of local languages and other languages in the public space. Street names can involve multimodal as a phenomenon which consists of verbal and visual aspects. I will end my presentations with this quote from Albert Camus. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you, Dianing.
Thank you, Miss Riama. So, Professor Riama refers to be called Miss, so that's why I called her Miss instead of Professor, right? Okay. Uh, Thank you for your presentation. It is interesting to see how a language preservation can lead into a diversity of street nameplates, and it's also interesting how that signage influences by cultural diversity both from the past, traditional culture, and also modern society, and also act of creativity. Thank you for the insightful knowledge. And if you have any question about her presentation, please write it down in the chat box, and then we will pick it some at the Q&A session. Next, we will have Professor Joe Bautista. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay, so Professor Joe will bring us to the cultural diversity in Los Angeles. Professor Joe, the screen is yours.
I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen, yes?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning in Indonesia, good morning in Korea, and good evening here in Los Angeles for those of you that are here from California State University, Northridge. First, I want to thank you for having me. I'm happy to present and was excited when I first heard about this opportunity. So again, thank you for having our university and having me speak to all your students. That's my contact information. You could reach me. I teach at California State University, Northridge, as stated. So we can ask questions or talk about that later. So I am not a Los Angeles native. What's interesting though is that I grew up in Los Angeles, but I was born in Angeles City in the Philippines. And I currently live in the Valley, San Fernando, but my family grew up in the San Fernando area in the Pampanga province. So the names are the same, but I live in different parts of the world. I've lived in Los Angeles most of my life, over 35 years. Identify as a SoCal resident and an Angelino. And so while I'm not born in LA, I was definitely raised in LA and consider myself an Angelino. And when you refer to Los Angeles, some people like to use the term melting pot, but in reality, and most like metropolitan cities in America, it's more considered a salad bowl, which is a different term that people like to use, because it's this idea that you are American or you are from Los Angeles, but you hold your own cultural identity or your parent immigrant cultural identity. That's why you'll often hear Americans speak as themselves as Mexican American or Filipino American or Asian American, because we have close ties of identity to our immigrant culture or our parents' immigrant culture. So Los Angeles is very much more of a salad bowl, as we like to say, instead of melting pot. And that's because Los Angeles is extremely diverse. There's over 4 million people in the Los Angeles city, 13 million people in the metro area, not as big as some Asian cities, but we have over 140 countries being represented in the Los Angeles area, 224 languages. So again, you could see that it's very diverse, and we embrace our diversity as Angelinos. 49% of the population of Los Angeles is Latinx or Hispanic, and what that means is Spanish-speaking origin or Spanish-speaking countries or heritage. 28% white or European background, 11% Asian, and 9% Black. So again, you can see that Los Angeles is extremely diverse, and we embrace that. And so when I was asked to present on the culture of Los Angeles, I had to think about it because there's so much to present. Surf culture, the Asian American culture here, the Black African American culture here, but one that predominantly was certain to me and my growing up in Los Angeles was the influence of Chicano culture in Los Angeles. And probably one of the biggest influences to me when it came to typography as a young designer, young artist. So I want to spend a short time talking about Chicano culture and typography and how you might see it and how its influence has sort of entered popular culture. So first, not many of you may know what Chicano or Chicana is. So I want to define it for you. And then another disclaimer is I am not a Chicano studies professor. I don't claim to be a Chicano studies expert, but I do live in Los Angeles. And so this is from the perspective of me growing up as a Filipino or Asian living in a Chicano, predominantly Chicano area growing up. So while not all Hispanics or Latinx individuals in Los Angeles are Mexican, the overwhelming majority is. About 78% of the Latinx population in Los Angeles is of Mexican heritage. So that's why the Chicano culture is very prevalent in Los Angeles. So a Chicano or Chicana is a person of Mexican descent living or born in the United States. And as a kid, like I said, I grew up and went to middle school and elementary school being the only Asian kid among a lot of Chicanos. And so I was known as Chino, which could be a slur or derogatory, but I looked at it as a nickname to me that made me feel accepted among the people that I was with, even though I wasn't Chinese. But even though there's a lot of, you would think there were a lot of differences, being Filipino, there were a lot more similarities to Chicano culture and Filipino culture than there were differences. First of all, my name, right? Bautista, that's a Spanish last name. Secondly, I had strong, close family bonds, Filipino culture and Chicano culture, tight family bonds, and the idea that family is your priority. The language, Tagalog, has many Spanish words. I'd say probably a quarter of the words in Tagalog are Spanish or in Spanish origin. What's interesting too, for Indonesians, when I went to Jakarta and Bali, I didn't know that while I was there about every 2 words I understood, because those words are also used in Tagalog as well. So Tagalog is very much a mashup of different languages. Number 4 is religion. Chicanos are very religious, Roman Catholic, same with Filipino culture. And so that was something we shared as well. And number 5 was foods. And so even though we may look different, there were a lot more similarities to us rather than differences. And there were a lot of things that me and my friends growing up looked up to. And one of them was this, growing up, young rebellious kids that love to tag or use graffiti, be involved in this idea of graffiti culture. The term tagger, if you haven't heard that before, is someone who vandalizes property with this style, usually in the style of graffiti. And so a tagger or tagging is the writing of a nickname or mark on a surface by a graffiti artist. And so we'd carry these Sharpies in our pockets and would draw on things when we could. I, being the scared and safe one, didn't do it as much, but definitely whenever we had the opportunity and we would sketch like this in our sketchbooks. I even asked my parents during this week when I was told to give this, when I told them I was going to do this discussion, I asked them if they could find some old drawings that I did that were in this style. She couldn't find it. So you start to see how this sort of typographic style and typographic, these words were influenced by Chicano culture in Los Angeles. And it stems from the 1960s and 70s. And so here's some old photos of these walls in this sort of tagger, or what's called placas, this writing. Another photo from the 1970s. This is Chaz Bojorquez with his tagging style on a wall. So where did this derive from? 1960s Chicano gangs in LA. It was usually in a black letter style, which derived from the religious texts that were made in the 1500s and 1600s for Bibles. And those were brought by the colonizers that would then colonize Mexico and Central America and convert people to Catholicism. And so the writing was in this black letter. They originally were used, this graffiti or this placas were painted on the walls as to define territory or immortalize your name. So you knew what neighborhood you were going into. So if you drive down the streets of Los Angeles back then, and sometimes today, they would identify whose neighborhood you're in now, right? Which gang owned this street. It was usually black and very thin in writing, different from the thicker writing that you would see from the East Coast style. So on the right, you see the East Coast style of graffiti from the 60s and 70s. And on the left, you see the West Coast style from the 60s and 70s. Today, it's a form of expression. Political opinions, heritage, life, religion. It's seen as a form of public art, a sense of resistance, storytelling, and empowerment. And so you'll see this style in LA. Sometimes you'll still see it as a way to let people know that you're in a certain gang territory, but you'll see it more as art now on the streets. You'll see it as at bars and restaurants. You'll see it as like on this sample on the left, a form of expression and pride for a community. And so it is very much this style that has become very popular in the Los Angeles area. And you'll see it in the influence in popular culture as well. So in sports, I'll show a couple samples of that today, art and design, music, entertainment, and fashion as well. Also part of this culture, very much in the Los Angeles area too, is this lowrider culture, which stems from the Chicano culture. So this was an event that happened a year ago that was curated by one of CSUN's professors, Dr. Denise Sandoval, the Lowrider exhibition at the Peterson Automotive. They still have a few there, but if you're ever in Los Angeles, you can go to the Peterson Automotive Museum and see a few of these. But at one point, there was a large exhibition of many of them. And so this is very much an LA cultural thing as well, which is the lowrider culture. And there's even a documentary about one of the more prolific and popular artists of this time, Mr. Cartoon. Netflix made a documentary called LA Originals about Esteban Oriol and Mr. Cartoon, who's a Mexican-American Chicano artist who does tattoos of celebrities and has even been commissioned to do some commercial work as well. And so you'll see a lot of this work now in the mainstream. And I had a chance to meet Mr. Cartoon at that event. So that's the photo of me and him on the bottom left there. Spent 3 minutes with them. So this style, which you saw earlier, which was the very thin sort of look, has evolved more into a calligraphy black letter style. And you'll see them often used in tattoos. And like I said, in popular culture, it has also now hit the mainstream. So Mr. Cartoon, that same graffiti artist, tattoo artist, who was in that image earlier, was commissioned to design the Los Angeles Clippers third jerseys, the city jerseys. This is his writing and his style that they asked him to do. And it truly becomes this Los Angeles cultural style that becomes represented, which has its roots in Chicano culture. Artists like Retina, who grew up also in Los Angeles, seeing that old English or black letter style, now does his mural artwork, which is inspired by that, but he's evolved it with more Asian and hieroglyphic and Hebrew writing, Arabic writing, but you'll see some of his work in Los Angeles as well. And then in popular culture, you'll see how Kanye West has taken this black letter style. His art director was a LA native, so that's probably where they got the inspiration from. And Gwen Stefani, who's Los Angeles, Orange County native, further south, started her brand Lamb. And for a while in the early 2010s, there was a lot of appropriation of Chicano style or Chicano culture with a lot of her music visuals. And in Asia, the Chicano culture has almost moved over into Japan with some artists, hip hop artists. This is Mona, or Sad Girl, a Japanese rapper. And also lowrider culture has made its way into Japan with car clubs in Tokyo. And so now you could even Google Chicano fonts and it'll show up as all these sort of what would be considered, when I grew up, tagger or graffiti style fonts and typography, but it's very much, again, used when it comes to this sort of style when you want to sort of have this rebellious or gangster, for lack of a better term, vibe to it. And if you want to read more about this, there's a book that I would highly recommend. It was published in 2015 called Cholo Writing, Latino Gang Graffiti in Los Angeles. I think you could find it as a free Google book or Amazon book as well. And that's it. I would like to thank you for, again, having me, and special thanks to Allison Diaz, Alejandro Rincon, Joshua Fajardo, and Christian Doshi, who were students that helped in the research and planning of this talk.
Thank you so much, Professor Joe. It's interesting how something that starts from the identity of gangs, if I'm not mistaken, become a popular culture and something that mainstream. It even touched and influenced many communities, not just Chicano, but even Asian, right? And now
Yes.
I want to get some tattoos. Like it's so beautiful. I want to get one, but I'm afraid of needles. So maybe just a temporary. Okay. I know some of you maybe have some question for Professor Joe, so please write it down in the in the chat box or in comment box in YouTube. And now we will move to Miss Hyeyoon Oh in Seoul Institute of the Arts. Miss Hyeyoon, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you, and I can see a lot of students of Seoul Art. Good afternoon. So, if you are ready, you can start
Yeah.
now.
Can you see it clearly?
Yes, I can see it clearly.
Okay. So hello, I'm Oh Hyeyoon from Seoul Institute of the Arts, and I'm very happy to meet you all. Today, my team will present you with a brief introduction to the South Korea culture and explain Hangul Korean typography. And at the same time, we will discuss the design of neutral, which is prevalent in South Korea these days, and its influence on the Hangul design as well. So we will discuss the present case study research with the student as well. So first, I'd like to talk about the Korean representative color culture. The 5 cardinal color of Korean means Korean traditional 5 colors. So 5 each different color based on the bearing the 5 elements. And it is considered as a fact that great affect Korean people and even present daily lives in South Korea. So each 5 different color contain each different meaning. So blue stands for Thursday and the East, and Tuesday stands for red and the South, and Saturday center, Friday West, and Wednesday for black as well. So 5 cardinal color include in the taegukgi, which is Korean flag, the national symbol. In addition, the colors are well used in bibimbap, which is a traditional Korean food. So earlier I spoke about the traditional color. South Korea is one of the countries that inherit their traditional colors. So neon signboard in the street in South Korea actually use brilliant color. But neon signboard have disappeared now since the street signboard maintenance began in 2000s. But we can still find them in many places. Among them, neutral, which is an important keyword for today's presentation, may be viewed as reinterpretation with a modern senses. So not mere restoration of the old thing as mentioned previously. In other words, it is not retro that has returned, but merely creative culture with the ripening to the nostalgia of the past for the older generation. So neutral has 4 permanent characteristics. So the first is regressive sentiments, which is random sense of the past caused by the recession. The second is maximalism, not minimalism, which is a symbol formative form. The third is beauty that rises from imperfection. And finally, it is characteristic focus on the story of the object. So first, the regressive sentiment aim to representative sentiments of consumers who are tired of the reality, something that exists in the past which they lost. So therefore, as the company used their inherit to revamp the past design that fits the neutral. So they makes consumer in teenager and 20s into it up to their tastes. So George Schumer in German psychology emphasized about the importance of the neutral, asserting the value of the old thing that have been outdated on long time. This is the case study of the neutral culture. And as economy is getting worse, this kind of yearning is amplified. The sentiment of consumer who wants to return the past is increased. So left side is Everland, is represent Amusement Park in South Korea, has recently gained great popularity with themes that reproduced the past according to the new management policies. In addition, since luxury brand first introduced components, ugly shoes worn by parents' generation in the past, they have begun trending again, and New Balance 205 series feature a retro design with an iconic story that the story series was created commemorates Maradona, who broke the first record. The third thing is British movie Bohemian Rhapsody gained popularity again and received high praise from many viewers in South Korea. But they are represented cases that use the sentiment of people who want to return the past and be comfortable. A heritage in other word in brand makes consumer intrigued by visually. So using assisted in incompetence, they bring warmth from things that are insufficient but sweet and small as well. I will keep move these things. This is neutral trend to show the music, which is throughout 80s music in South Korea. And the second is drama. And this is also represents old generation things. And this one is products and spaces as well. This is what I want to talk about today. This is Korean typography. Hangul was first created by King Sejong, as you know, and I'd like to talk about discussing the Hangul typography with a briefly. Hangul consists of combined letter unlikely Roman characters, so each phenomenon comes together from syllable, which is again formed into the word and sentence. So in this respect, at least 3,650 characters must be designed for Hangul Korean typography. Hangul has an architecture characteristic because Hangul is considered to be a letter built up, piled up. So the meaning of Hangul baseline is fundamentally different from the Roman alphabet. Hangul is characterized by differently in forming a frame such as ascender, a descender, and a baseline likely like the Roman alphabet. The Roman alphabet is often different in which width, while most of height is consistent. However, Hangul is consistent width, while each height is different. So recently, Hangul designers have done many number of the work that they render of old Hangul and digitalize it. It is considered to develop the country, develop together with the neutral as digital culture began the flourishing. And the designer focused on the old thing. For example, the following the projects have appeared. They are actualized as design elements are actively used based on the urban signboard and daily necessary. It is movement of the design who like to restore the original sprite through the calligraphy used of brush and written by master artisan. So the first of those case study is the pencils of Yang. Yang is the design studio founded by Yang and Zhang. It is typeface created by reflecting the characteristics of the pen and that modern people mainly used, not of the calligraphy writing we used by reusing brush in the past. It is reflects profile of writing supply in everyday lives. So this typeface had modernized the classic typeface and harmonized and the character list of the modern pens and reflecting the time when people wrote by using a brush. So to create this typeface, they have taken a lot of time and effort into the observing the familiar and friendly appearance and exploring a natural inclination that comes out comes out of the appearance. As a result, they have created a warm mood of self typeface and a new typeface for the body text here never lose visibility. These artwork for designer Kim Kizo, his first design in South Korea who popularized retro lettering, starting with lettering that have a retro typeface as a Lemonist the past have continued to be creative. So this typeface is Hanna Fonts distributed for free by the company called UA. This company designed the typeface that enable people to register in 1960s and 70s. They used the signboard with an adhesive sheet paste on the acrylic plastic and cut with a knife as a motif, modernized them. They then maximized the retro concept with the mood and primary school students draw a slogan on the poster. So characteristic of this typeface had sharp edge of the letter as they are cut with a knife. And the thickness of each stroke is the consistence. It is one of the expressions created to reproduce the mood of the old handwriting and the appearance before printing wasn't developed. So through the letter found in the street like that, the other typeface Ultoponte was designed as well. The Ultoponte was a typeface found in the signboard in the Ultra Street. This project was carried out while Muscalade in under advanced civilization made an antidote in the time when the technology was highly developed these days. They aim to deliver the story of the daily life through the typeface indirectly. They digitalized and restored and handwriting that considered as a symbol of the run-down area. So finally, they created a new typeface that make people's moments in the neutral. This is same company as well. So like Doyeon font, they created and modified as a summon place a ruler on the acrylic plate and cut out one by one as well. A letter automatically changed depending on the font. So as a clip is applied, letter like this. So the applied character that form the change depending on which vowel came next to the letter. The letter are cut straight as if a ruler was used as well. So each letter has form defined square frame compared to other typefaces. And it has rough, unsophisticated mood and as same as previous typeface. So they also make a good product with the only typefaces. The neutral culture is these are goods are reflected not only through the power of the typography, they reinterpreted the icon used by the parents' generation as well. And they designed they removed other specific design elements and then borrowed out font only with the letter which drew attention of the people. When you look at the design of the credit card on the very left, font package of if you keep using it, you will end up being homeless was provided together. So they made in font through the text as well. And a black scratcher in the middle of the redesign as a school supplies as well. They also made fun by changing a purpose. The last image is calendar. This calendar is to be turned off the page by pages. It is an old style of calendar that you might find in your grandma's house as well. However, the unique characteristic was also redesigned together so that the great impact of the neutral and was borrowed. So this typeface is a Choosung Boyot font. As everyone knows, Boyot is place where ships are made and repaired. In old day, artists inscribed by themselves for making that their own ship. The style of feminine were restored as they were, and they were modernized and developed the typeface as well. The Choosung Boyot has been innovated as cafe and set as a youth culture space now, based on the father's penmanship inscribed in the ships and the Boyot. So Choosung Boyot created brand identity and is currently being sold after a formal agreement with the Sandor Communication, which is Korean typography company. As the meaning of the story, these style feminine were combined tongue people and became more popular. So this is the following is the design typeface are used recently. The neutral design are applied to print materials such as book as well. There were letters that look like being written by hand before printing was developed, and the paper manufacture and texture of the paper at the same time. As they have restored and digitalized this letter and texture of the paper and the story of the time in conveying. A represented case of the poet who is Im Dongju with a raw chroma were used to make best used the time and when Chinese character and Hangul were used together. So I'm going to talk now about the typeface from the packages as well. In addition, it is widely used modern food package design. Palto bibimbap is a type of the noodle that has been popular in South Korea. Released limited edition commemorated the product launch. They recreated packages 35 years ago when it was first released. And the company targeting young consumer group added consumer concrete fun with the typeface itself and began renew old brand images. So the distinctive difference between the two packages shown here is that the number of color has been reduced in the new packages, and also than the previous one has 5 different colors, but the new one is only 3 different colors as well. The unnecessary graphic has been removed using a square font and made of only faces, colors, and decorative font with the formatting. So next, Korea first noodle. This is in line with the neutral praise. It was not only letter, but also the packaging that was redesigned as well, reflecting the reflecting on the design from the time when they first produced product was released in 1963. The Chinese character company identity was used as well, and by using from the 7 to 3 colors are simplified as well. In addition, the scarce shape of sans serif font was developed and used angular bending or concerned shape of the providing an unsophisticated and old-fashioned impression. Also, Korean representative record Soju aimed to reproduce the shape and color of the bottle from the 1960s and 70s. Due to the advantage of the cap currently used and the cap of the previous bottle was not applied. So it is one of the cases that were well balanced with the advance of both past and present and redesign as well. And by using the Hangul and Chinese characters stimulatively and visual sensibility was further maximalizing, and the unsophisticated mood was emphasized by the Hangul font with the wide and width. And South Korea, another leading food brand, Ottogi, is company that product representative instant food. So 3 minutes means to heat the food in the microwave for only 3 minutes. As these 3 minutes greatly gained popularity from the public and company modernized and previously packages that include the neutral sensibility and reproducibility. Overall, they tried to carry the product name to bring out the image of neutral. It has characteristics that release of the product name is enhanced by using a sans serif font as well. And the balance and the order of letter achieved within the square as seen before. It is remind people of wood block and style fantasy for the wood block print books. So compared to modern Hangul design, the size penmanship was greatly enlarged so that the primary function of the typography information delivered was focused. So this is beer, and also began to show the phenomenon on returning to the packet past through the characterless color and round typeface in the modern packages. This is carbonate drink, also returned the past and retained the previous design as well. The company made a decorative penmanship to the simplified sans serif font, which was the round formative penmanship. So they enhanced the releasability. In addition, this is the sugar company in Korea. The representative sugar company in South Korea also launched a design package that applied retro images and visual sensibility to return the basic philosophy of the company. So they tried to keep up the neutral and by using the Chinese character, not Korean.
Udah, mandi pagi.
So now the neutral culture has arisen in South Korea. In many changes taking place, various design areas, space products, graphic media, typography are also emerging. So it means Hangul Neutral doesn't only design typeface, but also reflects on the story of that time and the culture and of that time, as well as reinterprets them of the present days. The former system of notion of Hangul and Roman and the mixed-use Chinese character reflect on the culture of that time as it was. So in addition, the product used at the same time modernized again and used power of the continuing to the neutral. Among them, the power of typography works most, I think, and it was been once again served an opportunity to allow people to think about the importance of design and letter. Furthermore, we will expect that South Korea will continue inherit this culture in the future. So it was presentation of the Hangul design affected by the neutral culture, and thank you very much taking time to listen to the presentation.
Thank you so much, Miss Hyeyoon, for the presentation. Wow, thank you for introducing us to the philosophy of neutral culture. I feel like going back to the history with all the brush strokes and all the maximalist styles, and also how I amazed how the creator get inspiration from anywhere, like literally anywhere, even the shape of ruler in acrylic can be changed as a beautiful typeface. And now we will start the Q&A session. For those who have any question for our speakers, you can write it down in the chat box or in the YouTube comment box. And while we're waiting for more question, first question will be for Professor Joe. Regarding the graffiti or tagging, it is considered as a form of street art, but is it allowed or acceptable? I mean, are there people who are against the idea of tagging since it's quite similar to vandalism? Is there a law that that states tagging is prohibited? Which area of LA is filled with the most graffiti? That's the question.
So thank you for the question, Alex. I'll try to answer them each specifically. So it's one of those things where it is considered an art form and a form of expression. And you know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, these acts of vandalism would be considered negative, but and it still is to some people. You are correct. People see it as a crime. People see it as it's defacing the city. But you'll also see a generation of people that feel like it's expressing feelings and feels like there is a time and a place for it. And it's one of those things that if I saw somebody doing it, it's not like I would stop them. You know, it's this canvas that they can create on. But you'll see a lot of commissioned graffiti now. So you'll see a lot of buildings in Los Angeles and the suburbs of Los Angeles where you'll have people that want to commission graffiti artists to put a mural or a painting that represents some sort of culture because they do see it as a form of street art. So you are correct that there is a group of people that feel that it is vandalism, and it gets painted over. And when a building is vandalized, you know, the building owner or whoever it is will try to, you know, have the police or somebody do something about it, but it'll just get painted over. And just like this, you know, the New York graffiti in the 80s, how it was just painted over. If you paint over it enough, people don't do graffiti on it anymore. But there are areas of the city where you see a lot of it. And it's just, if you've ever been to Berlin or if you've ever been to Colombia, Bogota, it's just a way of life and a way of expressing that you see everywhere. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. So which area of LA is filled with the most graffiti? Is it all over the city?
Not all over the city, but you'll most likely see it in the more urban parts, or definitely in the downtown areas. But again, it's almost like it's a commissioned. Some of the buildings are very much commissioned to these artists to do it. And I've been to cities in Taiwan as well. I don't know if you know the city of Kaohsiung. The buildings there are beautifully drawn with this artwork, and so it's almost become a public art expression and piece. You know, 20, 30 years ago, it was defacing property. Now it's enhancing property. It's making the areas beautiful with the art in this style.
Thank you, Professor, for your answer. Alex, I hope that answered your question. And then, okay, there's another question from Imaniar. Hi, this is Imaniar from the Bandung Institute of Technology. Dear Miss Oh Hyeyoon, I really like your explanation of turning Hangul into neutral design. Do you think the same recipe can be duplicated in the Roman alphabet? So we see that from Miss Hyeyoon presentation, it's all applied in the Hangul typeface. So is it also applied in Roman alphabet in Korea, or can it be duplicated in the Roman alphabet, the same recipe?
Um, I think it is possible, but when they make a Korean typeface and they also make an English and Roman typeface at the same time, because we also used English and Korean together. So I think yes.
And oh, okay, thank you. Imania, is that answering your question? Okay, while we're waiting for Imania, there's another question from Sherina from Bunda Mulia University. It's for Professor Joe. Back then, is text considered scary since it is a sign of ownership of certain groups or gangster? I find it interesting that something that was considered illegal back then has now inspired a lot of big brands.
Yes. Again, the lettering that you see is still very much. It's not. There's still violence in cities, and there's still gang related organizations in these cities, and it is still used as a method to sort of identify streets. So that's still very much reality. But this is where I guess if you talk about cultural appropriation or these ideas of taking something that belongs to a certain group and then it is commercialized and you know is it a sign of flattery for that for those individuals, or is it cultural appropriation? That's a debate. I don't even want to get into that. But yes, it's very much this idea that this culture, this subculture, is then being borrowed and used, and in some ways, maybe paying homage to or referencing and using it as inspiration because maybe these groups identify with the storytelling or identify with the dissent or the messaging that it originally stood for. And so, yes, that's a big interesting question that you bring up, that these brands are then using it to sell their products. But that's been around forever, right? You see an art form that's sort of subversive and an art form that's really you know, for a small population, it gets taken by a brand and used to sell things, and we see that all the time. But yeah, but then hopefully you could stay close to the roots or to the sort of foundation of that by commissioning an artist like Mr. Cartoon to do it. You know, it's not like they had somebody who could copy that style. They actually went to the person who originated that style and asked him to do the LA Clippers logo, or asked him to do some tattoos or some writing for a movie or for a poster. So in some ways, at least they're keeping it somewhat honest and traditional by asking those artists to do the work. Hopefully that answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Joe. And I also want to thank you for I see that there's someone who tried to translate this webinar in YouTube. I would like to thank you for your kindness, so all the audience can understand more about the content. Okay, we have another question from Wenny. Wenny, you're from ITB. Expression of culture in typography from third speaker, really inspiring. I have question especially for Professor Hyeyoon Oh and Mrs. Riama. What's the future prospect for culture-inspired typeface, such as neutral and city signage of Indonesia? Thank you.
Is that question for me?
Yes. And also for Miss Riama.
Okay. I will go first. Can I just read again?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. So the question is, what are the future prospects for culture-inspired typeface, such as neutral and city signage of Indonesia, from your perspective?
I think both of them, because the neutral trends are influenced by the signage system as well. So I think both of them is really important to make the typeface in the future as well. But at that time in Korea, I think neutral is more important than the like signboard and signage systems, I think. Is that what you asked me? Is that right question?
Yes. Thank you. And Miss Riama, are you there? What do you think about this question?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Benny. I think any authentic creation is a gift for the future. So the prospects of culture-inspired typeface can be expected for science nameplates. Of course, yes.
Okay, thank you, Miss
Thank you.
Riama.
Yeah.
And I have a question in my WhatsApp chat box. So this is like a private message question, I think. It's for Miss Riama. Like we from your presentation, we can see that there's two different type. The
Yeah.
the Latin and then the traditional typeface.
Yeah.
Is there does the local community that lives there understand the typeface, or is it just for like visual for presenting the typeface? Do they really understand it, or is it only
Can
for
you?
like decorative? Oh, I'm sorry. I will start over. Pardon? Oh, I think you have to unmute your speaker.
Can you?
Repeat the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
So the traditional typeface in the nameplates, is it understand well by the community there, or is it become just as uh, decorative aspect only?
Yes. There were studies with a survey that not everyone agreed with the traditional art local script, but in Bandung only 1% of population understand that scripts, but the people from the community from a cultural background still appreciate the government policy to use it. And yeah, it's not very understandable for the people, but we can appreciate the our cultural background through the nameplates. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the answer.
Yeah.
Is there any other question that you want to ask for Miss Riama, Professor Joe, or Miss Hyeyoon? Okay, there's a question for the three presenter. Oh, wow. Okay. From this is from Eve. Okay. As a designer, if you have to choose, how would you prioritize on this typography on information? The readability or the culture? Who wants to answer first?
I guess I could go.
Okay.
If I understand the question correctly, is so what you're asking, is it readability or culture when prioritizing? Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, legibility is important, right? When you're trying to communicate information. But then there's this idea that you're trying to express something as well. And so that's why I don't believe one is more important than the other. I think that one is more effective depending on what you're trying to communicate. And so in the case of expressive typography, oftentimes the shapes and the forms, they can speak more than the words themselves. And so I feel like then the culture and it is brought out through the typographic shapes. So that's a tough question, but I feel like it depends on what you're trying to communicate and what you're trying to inform the user or the audience about. But the way you express that information through typography and how you express it through the cultural references of that typography can help enhance the message. Hopefully that makes sense. Good question.
Yep. Thank you, Professor Joe. How about you, Miss Riama? What do you think about this question? Is it readability or the culture and visual? Maybe?
Yeah, in the past, people in Germany use black letter, and it's very difficult to read. But people, this might start as a habit, and then they can read it clearly. But to see this design or typography on information or event, it must be readable. Yeah, for information, it must be readable. But for as expression of art, you can use any decoration or any style, and it depends on the context, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah.
Any more?
Yeah, but this represents the culture also. So it depends on the context. Yeah.
Okay, of course. And how about you, Miss Hyeyoon? The question, yes.
I have the same answer with two other professors as well. I think it depends on what it is for and where do you want to use it. But if you want to use the newspaper or book, you have to make really important things to communication. So it has to be to readability. But if you want to really symbolistic things like logo or sign and poster and anything, it is more important the culture thing rather than readability. So I think both are really important. Depending on the situation and depending on what you want to use for. I think. Is that make sense?
Yep, totally makes sense. So I totally agree with all of you. It depends on what is the purpose of this creation, of course. And there's another question, but it's in Indonesian. It's already answered by Miss Riama actually. So pardon me if I will answer it in Indonesian. So apakah penduduk lokal benar-benar memahami dari penulisan tradisional yang terdapat pada papan jalan, ataukah hal ini hanya menjadi sebuah pajangan? So actually this question refer to the previous question for Riama. Are the local people really understand the writing of the traditional typeface and the street nameplates? Or is just only for the decorative aspect only? And Riama, could you please answer it in Indonesia because you already answered it in English?
Oke. Tadi sudah disebutkan ada penelitian survei tahun 2017 oleh Erika Fajar terhadap responden. Ada 4 kategori, ada yang setuju, tidak setuju dengan syarat, bahkan menganggapnya tidak relevan. Memang misalnya contohnya di Bandung sendiri, itu hanya ada 1% saja orang-orang, mungkin kurang, orang-orang yang bisa mengerti aksara Sunda. Tapi para budayawan dan para sesepuh lah istilahnya, menganggap penulisan nama jalan ini tetap menjadi sebuah suatu hal yang penting meskipun tidak dimengerti oleh banyak orang. Dan menurut saya setidaknya karena kita tahu zaman postkolonialisme itu masa kolonialisme itu memang banyak bahasa pengetahuan yang dihapus oleh penjajah sehingga kita merasa tidak mampu dan tidak berdaya, kita jadi gagap. Sekarang kita jadi gagap kembali terhadap apa yang kita miliki dulu. Tetapi menurut saya ini adalah sebuah usaha yang baik, yang di mana pembiasaan, karena kan papan jalan itu kan setiap hari kita lihat ya, dan juga memantik rasa ingin tahu kemudian. Dan pemerintah juga tidak begitu saja menuliskan di situ, terutama di Bandung. Di Bandung itu ada kampanye-kampanye untuk memperkenalkan bahasa aksara Sunda. Dan Direktorat Kebahasaan pun sudah membuat sebuah standarisasi memasukkan aksara lokal kita ke Unicode, yaitu standar penulisan aksara berbagai tulisan untuk bisa diaplikasikan di komputer. Jadi menurut saya ini adalah bukan hal yang sia-sia, tetapi kita harus membuat satu strategi lebih lanjut. Jadi masalahnya tuh tidak sederhana, jadi tidak seperti ditempel seperti itu aja. Memang harus ada pemikiran lebih lanjut yang terpadu dari antara pemerintah, masyarakat, dan juga kita mengenali sejarah kita yang masa lampau, sehingga kita merasa ini jadi milik kita. Kalau bukan milik kita, rasanya memang jadi agak jauh berjarak dengan kita. Seperti itu, Bu Dianing.
Thank you, Riama. We'll try to translate some of it. Maybe.
Thank you.
I think some of us curious about what Riama just told because it's such a long answer. So like her mentioned before, not there's only small community that actually understand the meaning of the street signage, with the traditional typeface. But regardless that, I'm sorry. The effort of preserving this typeface has been the main issue that the government wants to raise. So even though people are not knowing the meaning right now, but at least there's already effort to preserve this language, and also the government is now trying to put all the typeface, the language into Unicode. Am I right, Riama, Miss Riama? Which is which is the
yes.
Yeah, which is I'm sorry. which is they attempt to make this traditional language and typeface into the computerized version of it, so it won't be vanished, even though all the books and the perkament already gone. Parkman, I'm sorry. Is it clear? I'm sorry. I'm pardon for my English. Okay. I hope my answer can explain what Riama means. Okay, let's go to the next question. We have a question from Fadel to Professor Joe. It is interesting to see the explanation about the street culture that used in the LA. It has so many different styles. Since when each group or culture or gang has its own characteristic and their own style. Are these styles already recognized by design standard? Thank you.
Um, I'm not understanding what you might mean by design standards or recognized by design standards. I'm trying to think about what you might be referring to. Um, since each group culture
Okay.
has its own characteristics and their own style, are these styles already recognized by design standards?
Is it a standard for, yeah, hmm.
Can you clarify what you mean by design standards?
Fadel, can you clarify what do you mean by design standard here? Is it the design standard of like kerning and everything for typeface like that, or something else?
If that's what you're referring to, I would say that there really are no standards per se. Yeah, I would say that it's, again, it's just like any sort of expressive form of art. I don't think that there's any rule or standards in which you would create this lettering or this graffiti work. Yeah, I don't think that there's any sort of set standard as far as
Because
from a
it's
design
more,
standpoint. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
maybe because it's more to the art, mm, like 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 art, not design, right? It's
for
okay.
legibility.
Design, yeah, readability.
Then no. The answer is no. There would be no design standard. You could see how some of the earlier characters, you almost have to sit there for a few minutes to even see what the letter form is. So when it comes to legibility and design standards, I don't think that when these artists or these individuals are creating it, there's not necessarily a standard or guideline that they're following. Again, they're borrowing and mimicking the black letter forms that they have seen and are used to seeing in the traditional sense. So yeah, so there are no design standards.
Because no standard for expression of art, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Professor Joe. Okay, next, this question comes from Refilia from Bandung Institute of Technology. Dear Mrs. Riama, is there any possibility that nowadays the traditional typefaces are used in different media, or is it only used for the city signage?
Yes, we can see in a building, in government building, but I think the media, the right media, is from the beginning, from the early generation, because I'm a children books. I like children books. Maybe we can introduce the script in children books. I have a student who did a final assignment. She make 2 languages and 2 script story from Rejang, Sumatra. And I've heard that the government there very interested with the idea. I think if the government start from the beginning, or the young generation, the traditional script will be familiarized, and they will understand the languages. Yes.
I see. Yeah, we should start doing that, I think, not only attach it in the some street
Yeah,
name, but
yeah,
also in different like applicable media, such as like children's storybook. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Riama. And
yeah,
I have another question for you. From the
yeah.
presentation, it seems
Mm-hmm,
that Kawi typeface, is it
mm-hmm,
the Hanacaraka maybe? Or is it different?
yeah.
Okay. For street sign are found mostly only in few cities in Indonesia like Bandung and Yogyakarta. And we know that Bandung and Yogyakarta is some of the city that rich in cultural heritage.
Yeah.
And how does this typeface still get preserved in those particular places? Meanwhile, it's not really used anymore for other parts of Indonesia. Is it because of the local government effort of preserving the typeface, or is it because the local people is the one preserving it?
Okay, for Nilam, thank you for the questions. Because not all regions in Indonesia have these kinds of scripts. Maybe 5 to 12 city. If you remember from the Kawi history slide I showed earlier, the beginning Kawi script spreads through some cities in Indonesia only. Maybe from Sumatra, like Batak, we have Pustaha Batak, and then to South Sumatra, and then Jogja, Bali, and then to Makassar. And we found that recently in Bima, there's also a script, traditional script. And so that's why that not every region has street nameplates. It's because they don't have their own scripts. Yeah,
Okay, so it's partly because not every region have the script, right?
yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Riyama. And lastly, because we almost reached our the end of the event, this final question is from Imaniar for Mrs. Riyama. So, with the culture diversity in Indonesia, from your perspective, how how to make the best salad bowl for Indonesian? I mean, like with the range target audience, the audience target, which is like really broad, because we have so many culture here in Indonesia. What is the best salad bowl recipe for Indonesian?
Wow. Thank you for the question, Emmanuel. So same with the question from Nilam. For her second questions, is it both for the government and the society who preserve these scripts? And we have a lot of subculture. We have a lot of cultural background. It's I think the designer, the artists who are very creative with this can both together to make our own recipes. I think my answer is like that.
Okay, so we already have that recipe? I am just curious. Or
Yeah, yeah, we can see in many things. I think we have a hybrid or acculturation from many background, and it seems that we can see it in our uh, costume, traditional costume, and also we can see it in our young generation. They mix what what is in the trend, and also they mix what is from their own culture. So we cannot have one recipe because we have a lot of suku is
Tribes?
tribes. Yeah, we have a tribe, and also we are very open and very flexible. And then maybe there's no one recipe for that.
So instead making only one recipe, why not we make a lot of recipe like
Yeah,
Caesar salad, chicken salad, and
yeah.
like Japanese salad? Yeah,
Put dressing.
and with a lot of dressing. Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
will be
yeah,
better because like
yeah.
we have a lot of variety then.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mrs.
vegetarian
Riyama.
or not.
Yes. Okay. Okay. One last question. I promise you. Also for Mrs. Riyama. Since it's from Hakim Lubis, alumni from ITB, and he was your student 30 years ago. Wow. Okay. So since he was in college until now, he have always been furious and curious about why big nation like Indonesia has never had a good typographic culture in modern times. He call it graphic disability. Is there any missing link between the era of the use of the Kawi letters, which functionality artistically and their usage is good compared to present time? Is it because our people's ignorance about the typography, or is it because of the failure of graphic designer to educate the nation, or is there because of anything else?
Wow,
Wow.
very long
Yes.
question. Very long time not see you, Hakim. Yes, I think I've already said in my presentation, we have a great Nusantara, and we have a lots of heritage, a good local content. But as we know, the colonialism already erase our culture, and then as a as a as a country, maybe we forget because they make our inferior with also with our scribe, also with our knowledge and many things. I think now we have some kebingungan, confusion with this, because it's a very long time we already uh, our culture erased by the colonialists. I think that's the reason why.
Thank you, Mrs. Riyama. Well, I guess it's our job now to make it uh, more acknowledged, and maybe it can be like Chicano street art. It can be like become big and known by the world, right? So it's up to you, Hakim Lubis. I should say Mr. Hakim Lubis. I think you're older than me. Okay.
Yes, now we don't have a confidence with our own. I think that's because it has been erased from our culture.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Riyama. Okay, so it is really interesting when we see after we saw from three presentations today. It is interesting how the movement, a lot of movement, starting from the identity, from the nostalgia, and other aspect can swap away the trend in different area, and also applicable in different media also. And I want to ask one last question for three presenter, and then I will end this event after that. So from your perspective, how long will this trend will be less? Will it be less forever, or will it be stop? And how? Just like that. I mean, yeah. Is it clear, or should I start again
Please,
the
Ion.
question?
Please, Ion.
Okay, sorry. So from your perspective, is this like Chicano street art, and also the Kawi typeface, and then the neutral in Hangul typeface, will it be only a short time trend, or will it be long lasting, and why? That's my question. Who wants to start first? Maybe Joe wants to start first. Professor Joe?
Sure. I think styles come and go. You know, from a commercial sense, from a branding perspective, I think companies pick up on a style. But I think with the culture itself, it'll last forever. You know, with the subculture of Chicanos, it'll always be there. That's their culture, and they own that. But as far as popular culture, you know, it'll go away for a while, and then it'll come back in a different style. You're seeing styles from the '90s coming back now. You know, with sort of the grunge look is coming back, and so I feel like it's this up and down as from a typographic and commercial side. It'll come and go, but the culture will always own it forever.
Thank you for your answer. It's such a good answer. And how about you, Mrs. Riama? What do you think?
So I have a very short answers. If we look at the history of the country, in this case Indonesia, it depends on who rules at the moment. Who has the power?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But it will be always there, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the trend.
yeah.
Okay. And how about you, Miss Hyeyoon? What do you think about this trend? Will it be less, or will it be changed by another trend, and why?
I also have a really short answer as well. I think it will continue just few years more. I think because neutral culture is starting like 5 or 6 years before in Korea. So I think neutral culture and like neutral typeface will be continue in, I think, like few more years. And my student also have a question, so can I ask to Professor, is that okay?
Yes, this. Oh
Yes.
yeah, we haven't had a question from Seoul Art students. Please.
Okay. So I will read the questions. So I'm not sure of understanding your presentation. Professor Joey said LA is more like a salad bowl, and I wonder that New York or some other city in United States, where can I see the melting pot images? And I'm curious about LA graffiti are legal or illegal. And also Indonesia, there's many dual language users. I've known that in Linguist Love Indonesia, there's so many languages and dual languages user and believer. There's a difference with the believer and dual language users in Indonesia. Is that clearly understand?
Can you
I
repeat the
understand.
last question, please?
My student asked about that there is many dual language user in Indonesia. So I've known that linguist loves Indonesia. There's so many language and dual language user, and there is different with bilingual and dual language user. Is it clearly understand?
I understood a little bit of the first part with the idea of the salad bowl concept. So yeah, New York is very much salad bowl as well, in that you have many subcultures of immigrants or immigrant second generation, third generation. That's why you have these neighborhoods, you know, like in Little Italy or Little Tokyo, because again, they identify with their own background, but then at the same time, they identify as being American or a New Yorker or an Angelino. So New York and a lot of major cities in the United States are very much this salad bowl concept. And then I forgot the other half of the question, sorry.
I'm sorry, Miss Hyeyoon, could you repeat the second question
Okay.
for Miss Professor Joe?
Okay. Also, she is curious about LA graffiti are legal or illegal.
Oh, illegal for sure, but again, it's not like it's heavily enforced. There's other crime out there that is far more prosecutable, I guess, that police will spend their time on. But like I said, graffiti is now being more commissioned. You're getting artists to be asked to actually paint on a wall and asked to do a mural. It's a form of decorative art for some of these buildings, again, to represent culture and represent storytelling within the streets of downtown Los Angeles.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, could you repeat the question for Mrs. Riama? I'm really sorry.
Oh yeah, sure. She is asking about the dual language user.
Mm-hmm. Or could you say it in Korean?
Oh, I got an English text from my students.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just like to quickly repeat.
Okay. Or maybe she can say it in Korean. Maybe it's more understandable for you, or for
Yeah. Just 1 second, please. Sorry.
yeah, it's okay. So while we're waiting for Miss Hyeyoon and the question for her student, I would like to announce before we end this event, we will have a photo shoot session together, or a screen cap for Zoom screen cap. So please get ready to share your best appearance. So, and then I will give you the the code. I mean, like I will tell you when we will do it.
I'm very sorry about that. Thank you
No
very much for
problem.
waiting for us. She is asking about how different your language and bilingual people.
Okay. So I'm sorry. I only get the bio language, like
Bilingual people, and I heard there is lots of
uh-huh.
people to speak both like dual language in Indonesia. So how different between the dual language and bilingual languages in Indonesia? Can you understand?
궁금한 건지.
From uh like uh, can you repeat again? I'm really sorry. Like I understand slightly about the Korean one. So she's wondering about the user of bilingual user, right, in Indonesia.
she's not about the, she's not asking about the form. It's about more like user.
How user? How many user?
How many user?
Or how they use it?
Yes, how they use it in Indonesia.
Okay. So I think, Mrs. Riama, do you understand the question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. And thank you for interest in Indonesia. Yes, they are quite different. The dual language which use Kawi or Hanacaraka or Sunda, Aksara Sunda, which use Latin script. It's different language, but it needs some adjustment because it's very different. Actually, I'm not the expert on this. Maybe I have a friend who can answer this. I think he's the one in the audience here. Or I can answer it you later and I will talk to him because I'm not the expert of the languages. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Riama.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Riama.
Yeah.
And okay, so I think that question wrap up our Q&A session today. Thank you for all the interest and all the good question for all speakers. And before we start the photo session, I would like to thanks all of our incredible speakers today with their interesting topics. And I hope that this is not the end of our collaboration, and it will lead to more and bigger collaboration like in the future. Okay, so let's now start to for the photo session. Host, are you ready to take it? Okay, for those of you who can turn on your video, please turn on your video, turn on your camera, and then our host will give the sign.
Okay. Okay, wait.
Okay, I think we have 9 screens, so please be patient. We have now we have like 167 attendants. Wow, I don't expect it.
Wait, Miss Dianing.
So I see some of you start to brush your hair. And I hope this will be beneficial for you and your future creation. And I see some familiar faces out there.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
ready? Screenshot. Yeah. One. This is for the uh, first page, but I don't know which one are you in my screen. So for every page, you maybe need to pose in front of your camera because I don't know you will appear in which page. Okay, this is first photo. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, wait a second. Miss Hyeyoon, could you go to the to the screen also? I cannot see you. I mean, like you are one of the speaker. You're one of our highlights today, and we went. Okay, great. And Professor Shinju. Yes.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Wait, sorry. 1, 2, 3. One last time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for your attendance today. And this webinar will be also recorded and published in our YouTube channel. And in fact, the link provided in the poster, so you can go back there and watch it again. And also thank you for the speaker. With this, we will end this webinar. Thank you and good afternoon and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, bye.